Hello, my name is Rebecca Kinsinger. I'm an autistic self-advocate and board member at CASDA, which stands for the Canadian Autism Spectrum Disorder Alliance. I'm also the parent of 2 neurodivergent children, and I'm based in the province of British Columbia in Canada.
And I'm Jonathan Lai. I'm the Director of Strategy and Operations at CASDA and an adjunct faculty member at the University of Toronto, based in Ontario, Canada. First, for this presentation, I'm going to give you some background about a national autism strategy before Rebecca shares about some issues and solutions, and I'll come back to talk about next steps. So background, just about CASDA. In 2007, a group of nonprofit organizations came together to advocate for government action for autism. The founding members of CASDA all believed that there was more the Canadian government could do for autism through their leadership and a national strategy. Since then, this alliance has grown to over 100 member organizations and works towards the vision of autistic Canadians realizing their rights as fellow citizens. A national autism strategy means aligning policies, programs, and services across Canada with that vision. So over those years, there's been a maturation of the autism sector, as with many other disability sectors. And that has begun including the voice of autistic people. This aligns with the CRPD, and as we heard in the opening remarks of this conference, that disabled peoples are subjects and not objects in advocacy. At the same time, over the years, inequalities still abound in service access by age group, region, culture, and race. Last year, in 2019, the federal government of Canada has committed to developing a national autism strategy, and consultation processes have begun this year. So moving on to solutions, over to Rebecca, how can we realize the CRPD more fully through a national autism strategy?
Right. Disability rights, including autism, are moving towards a social model of disability. The CRPD aligns with this model. A social model of disability means the barriers are removed rather than disabled people needing to change themselves. When barriers are removed, people are more independent and equal in society. We should see this develop in training and education, and in the language that is used, we'll build a more inclusive environment as part of national autism strategy, alongside specific needs that are to be addressed. Personally, I'm teaching myself and my children how to identify systemic barriers, derogatory attitudes, and social exclusion in order to shape our environment and create environments for other disabled people that are more inclusive.
Thanks. And I guess for children on the autism spectrum, you alluded to this already, but what else is part of an inclusive social environment?
An inclusive social environment happens when we address how disabled children are being denied full participation, exposed to prejudicial attitudes, and inaccessible social activities. These are real issues which create the current barriers that disable autistic children. Education and training are important to reduce stereotypes of autism and to increase understanding of the complex needs of autistic Canadians in order to accommodate children in public spaces where proper accommodations are not currently in place. Inclusion is about offering the same activities to everyone while providing support and services to accommodate people's differences.
That's a great definition. Are there other examples of full inclusion, Rebecca, that you can think of?
Sure. Currently, in environments like hospitals, public service buildings, and spaces the government runs, there can be difficulty in fully accessing the services by disabled or autistic people. These environments can be stressful, and when an autistic person is under stress, it can become hard to process information at the same speed that everything else is happening. It's essential to have the government engage and have a deeper understanding of issues like this, and accommodate the needs of the autistic community and bring us closer to equality in services and realize our rights more fully.
Yeah, and having first voice advocates like yourselves with representation from across the entire spectrum is a very much needed next step. And to make that happen for systemic change, it's an asset. And now we'll talk about how to move on to next steps and course of action moving forward.
Right. In terms of next steps for a national autism strategy, what advocacy work is going on in Canada in autism?
So at CASDA, we have organized policy areas that are under federal jurisdiction in Canada so that components are actionable by the federal government. We have a roadmap with feasible quick wins, medium-term and long-term actions that the government can take as the strategy is being developed. These are laid out in sequence. Working towards a national autism strategy that is sustainable and scalable to other disabilities is paramount. There are components that have policy levers to affect greater change across other disability areas. For example, ensuring consistent financial support for all those with disabilities in Canada and having specific tax credits as avenues for governments to support all disabled Canadians. This year at CASDA, we also launched and gathered stakeholder opinions and launched a policy brief compendium. This includes policy recommendations that the community wants to see across these pillars of policy action. And lastly, we are launching a journal for equity in the sector to build up First Voice advocacy capacity in Canada. This journal will focus on equity and policy implications.
That journal sounds like a great move forward. Last question. How will a national autism strategy impact the future for children with disabilities? And what is the role of data and monitoring for that?
Yeah, so the National Autism Strategy can be a starting point for change, and it shouldn't be an endpoint. Certain areas of the National Autism Strategy have a broader impact beyond the autism community. At CASDA, we advocate for a National Autism Strategy to have a sustainable, continuous improvement model. And improvement requires data to inform change. So monitoring and data are essential to informed policymaking around the progressive realization of the CRPD for autistic Canadians. We cannot meaningfully change what we don't know and don't measure. So in closing, we want to thank our side event sponsors, our fellow panelists, and the UN DESA for this opportunity to speak here. Thanks a lot.